Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a wonderful guest with me today. He's got an amazing story to share with us, and I cannot wait to hear it. His name is John Brink. He is a best-selling author, bodybuilder, fitness expert, CEO, survivor, and thriver, who was born in 1940 in Nazi-occupied Holland during World War II. He is also the author of 3 books and host of the On The Brink podcast series. He is also a fierce advocate for erasing the stigma of ADHD, something he has lived with his entire life. John, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cheryl. Look forward to it.
And I know I just touched on a few of the highlights of your story because there is so much to unpack and so much in your story that is just absolutely mind-boggling. I also want to emphasize the fact that, yes, you are a bodybuilder and that you are, of course, since you were born in 1940, you are a very young, healthy, active, and vibrant 83 years young.
Correct. I like that. Yeah.
You look fantastic. And that's
Oh, thank
probably
you.
one of the main reasons, another reason I wanted you on the show, because of course I love the, health, vitality and wellness, over 50, 60, 70 and beyond. And you certainly are the poster child for that.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so tell us your story.
So, Cheryl, I was, as you already indicated, born in 1940, November the 1st, actually. I had just turned 83 about 3 weeks ago.
Happy
And,
birthday.
well, thank you. And 83 years young, I like to think, rather than old. Old is just a number in my world. And, so the time that I was born was a troubling time and a challenging time. And especially now, if you look down the world and we see all the wars going on in the Ukraine and Russia and Middle East and in other places. And especially then, it is important to share with the people in the public, how fortunate we are living in democratic countries rather than living in those other places, which in a lot of cases are dictatorships or something like that. The world is at war. And the other big mistake that a lot of people make about it, or not even think about it likely, is that you think, okay, if you have war, then you have war. And then when the war is over, everything goes back to normal. But that's not so. That may take a generation, sometimes more than one, and a lot of times more than one. And it is devastating. And bless every single day for all the people that are listening to us from around the world, in particular North America. How lucky we are. We live in a democratic country, and sometimes some people are challenging that and saying, well, maybe it's better to live in a dictatorship. Go live in Korea, or in Putin's Russia, or in Venezuela, or Cuba, and then believe in the system that you have, although it's never perfect, but it is better than all the alternatives. That then being said, it means a lot to me, that living in tranquility and peace, relatively speaking. And, so in Holland, Holland was invaded by the German armies in April 1940. My mother had already 2 kids and was pregnant with me, a sister that was 1 year old, a brother 2 years older, and my dad was called into the Dutch army in April of 1945. And the last they heard from him is when he was in Rotterdam, a big city, a couple of million people. The whole downtown of Rotterdam was bombed, and that's the last time he was seen. And they did not find out what happened to him until 5.5 years later.
Oh my
And
goodness.
yeah, so for her it was a tough time. Everybody around us had the same issues, same challenges, and things were tough and difficult. The first thing that I remember is probably when I was 3.5 or 4, when there were hundreds of bombers in the air, daytime and nighttime, bombing Germany. And for those that are familiar with Holland, Holland is a relatively small country, and I was born in the extreme northeastern part of Holland, about 10 minutes away from the German border and close to the sea. So a lot of the bombers would come over that path to avoid flak from down below, where there was water, was no flak. And they would bomb the German cities that were directly or indirectly involved in the war armament. And we used to go outside on a flat deck behind the house to watch the bombers go overhead, not to look at them, but more for the purposes of us safer to being outside than inside. And in the distance, we would see the German cities burning. And that was the first impression. And a sound, hundreds of plane bombers in the air. It's a sound that even at that age, you will never forget. The other thing that I
That
remember.
had to be absolutely terrifying. You're just a small child.
Yes.
How do you process that?
Well, you don't until many years later, that I was affected by PTSD, and then I got counseling for the inner child, actually well into my 50s, of the fear of losing that one parent, so because everybody was on their own then, so very emotional actually, and so that does affect you. The other part was, Charles, is the especially the winter of 1944-45 was the hunger winter, and was the coldest one on record actually in Holland, and a lot of kids and people that were vulnerable, older people mainly, died because of lack of food. And then the cold was devastating as well. We as kids would go out every morning. We would go out with gunny sacks into the railroad yards and pick up anything edible or burnable. And the reason that we did as kids is they wouldn't shoot us, but they would put us one, and we just came back the following morning. And so it was tough. And I still can feel, even today, still the feeling of hunger. And now, nearly 80 years later, still have that feeling. The feeling of cold and anxiety always stayed with me. And, then we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945. And it left such an impression on me that I always knew I would go to Canada, to the land of my heroes. And in my mind, there was no question about it. That's what was going to happen. And, but we saw far too much then, and we were close to the German border as they pushed the Germans through Holland and then through the northern part of Holland back into Germany. By the time they got to our area, they had virtually nothing left, and they blew up all the bridges behind them to slow down the Canadians and the Allied forces. Even a bridge right in front of our house, I still remember well, was laying in the crawl space underneath our house with pillows on our heads, and hearing the bridge blow up, and then a lot of things that we should not have seen, being shot and legs and arms, and a neighbor that got a bullet through his brain, and all stuff that we should not have seen. But that then being said, it took, it stayed with me for the rest of my life, obviously. And, so then the other part about me is that I was not very good academically. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? Do we send him to the mentally challenged school, or should we get him a job of some sort and to build a trade? And fortunately, my parents were beautiful people, and so they decided to send me to a furniture factory. My dad was involved in lumber, and I loved lumber, and I got trained as a furniture maker. And, loved it. And then I was going to go to Canada when I was 17, and my parents wouldn't let me then.
Mhm.
And I was then drafted into the Dutch Air Force for 2 years, 30 months actually. And then finally, I did emigrate to Canada when I was 23. I kind of felt of myself that I had failed academically. A lot of my
Mm.
friends would go to college and university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but then
Mhm.
it was kind of looked down on, and kids are hard on each other. And all of a sudden, the ones that were my friends were no longer my friends anymore.
Mm.
And but I was always optimistic, regardless of all of that, and kind of lived in a world of my own, and still dreamed about going to Canada. And so finally, I didn't even tell my parents about it, but when I was 23, I applied at the Canadian Embassy for immigration
Mhm.
status. Luckily, I didn't want anybody to support me or to go there, but I wanted to go right away, so they allowed me into the country within 3 weeks as a landed immigrant, and I wanted to start with nothing, to prove to me, only me, that I could do just as well as the other people that, in my view, had been so successful in college and university. And
Mhm.
so I took a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and $150 Canadian when I left Amsterdam. And by the time I wanted to build my own lumber mill. So my
Mhm.
dream was go to Canada. My second dream was build my own lumber mill, and then start with nothing, no
Mhm.
contacts, didn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. By the
Mhm.
time I got to, for all those people that know, they know Vancouver,
Mhm.
BC. BC is a beautiful, Canada is a beautiful country, and BC is a beautiful province, big one,
Mhm.
but beautiful. So I came to the immigration office in Vancouver, and fortunately there was a German fellow and I could speak some German. And I told him what I wanted to do. He said, go to Prince George. Now, Prince George was then a boomtown. It's physically exactly in the center of British Columbia, about 500 miles north of Vancouver, which puts it physically north to south in the center, east to
Mhm.
west in the center.
Mhm.
And there's a lot of timber all around us, and it was just starting to boom, and they're building sawmills. And so I arrived here in July of 1965,
Mhm.
and I had my suitcase, my 2 sets of clothes, and 3 books, and then I had exactly $25.27 in my pocket. But what I had in spades is I had attitude. No matter what happens today, and if it is tough today, I always believe tomorrow is going to be better. I had lots of passion. Whatever I do, I give it 150%, and that's what I do. And work ethic, I work harder than anybody.
Mhm.
And what follows then is success. And
Mhm.
so that's what I did. I started as cleaner man, then lumber pilot, and on and on and on. And
Mhm.
very quickly, I still had to learn the language, obviously, but I started as lumber pilot, lumber green chain foreman, and within a year and a half, I was a superintendent. And then
Mhm.
within 2 years, I already was part owner of a little sawmill in, of
Mhm.
all places, the Yukon. Yukon Territory
Mhm.
is next to Alaska, and it's
Jeez.
about 1,000 miles north of Vancouver. And now you talk about, before we started the show here, you talked about the weather in Denver and here and blah, blah, blah. And you said it's about 17 degrees in Denver, which is very cold. I shared with you then today, it will be tonight. It's snowing in Prince George. As I look out of the window behind us here, tonight it will be 25 below zero. And tomorrow and Friday, it will be 30 to 40 below zero.
Okay,
Now,
that's making me cold just thinking about it. And I feel like I feel like a big, lightweight because I wouldn't go outside this morning and take a picture of the snow and the sun shining on it for my niece who lives back east because it was just too cold.
yeah.
It's hard to believe I used to be a skier. I used to be a lot tougher, I think, than I am right now. I don't know.
Yeah. So now you can well imagine coming from Holland, which is a relatively
Mhm.
mild climate, probably something maybe similar to Denver or Vancouver or the Lower Mainland. Watson Lake, Yukon is where I was. I've seen the coldest that I've seen there, 62 below zero. And so I was there for 5 years and ended up owning probably half the town and had a motel and a sawmill and then a long story. It's all in my book, Against All
Mhm.
Odds. Refer to that. I send you a copy of it. Is
Mhm.
I gave it all away and started over again. In Prince George.
Mhm.
Uh, Nothing, and again build up from nothing, and
Mhm.
then within 10 years from arriving here, I started a company called the Brink Group of Companies, or Brink
Mhm.
Forest Products
Mhm.
Ltd. And it's part of 10 other companies that I own. And I'm not here to brag about the companies that I
Mhm.
have. That's not
Mhm.
what my story is about. But it's about staying the course, building
Mhm.
companies, and working hard. And some people say to me, oh, you're so lucky and blah 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 and all the other kind of things. And but I always say the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's how it
Yeah.
works. So and
I do
and
have one quick question. It's just gnawing on my little brain that you were talking about getting there to Prince George and oh no, the Yukon even, and how cold it was. And all I could think of is, wait a minute, he only had two sets of clothing in his suitcase. Did you how did you get through that? Did you, stop somewhere and get some winter clothing? How did you deal with that?
so the first month that I came here was July in
Uh-huh.
1965, and I arrived in Prince George. And then it took me a while to get a job. I slept outside and walked about 8 kilometers, 5 miles to the place they promised me a job. And, so I bought then the necessary clothes that I had and started piling lumber on the green chain. And even when I was piling lumber during the wintertime, obviously you dressed well, but they used not stop the mill. You just piled lumber outside, and they
Mhm.
would say it's too cold if it was after 20 below. Otherwise,
Mhm.
you had, and it's not for everyone, I guess. But
Yeah.
I was building a career. I never even thought about that. For me, it was just a question of even when I was piling lumber, I already was designing uh, the 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 model for the company and what it would look
Mhm.
like and the address and the name and all of that. So for me, it was
Jeez.
just a matter of time.
Okay, I just want to go back and what you had said earlier in the recording about being so grateful that especially those of us who live in North America and how some people just don't really appreciate what we have. And just listening to your story and the amount of commitment, sacrifice, and dedication that you had, that you were sleeping outside and then you would walk the 8 kilometers to the place who had offered you a job or promised you a job. How many people in this day and age would do that?
Yeah, that's a good question, Cheryl, that you asked that. For me, it was a question. I was interacting with me, not proving to anybody, but
Mhm,
I knew always that I could do it too. I just was not very good in school. And
mhm,
and I didn't know why, but I wasn't very good at it, but I was still smart. I was a good writer, amazingly. I was good with numbers, but otherwise I was not good at what I was doing, and I was ashamed of it, and I felt I
mm,
failed. So, and that was another reason that I wanted to go to the land of my heroes, but I also wanted to prove to me that I could do it myself. And
mhm,
and it took me a long time before I was able to do that. Is that a couple of things happened. Is even already when I was successful in my companies,
mhm,
and I had several of them. I still have numerous of them now. Is that people said to me, "Why don't you have to write a book about this?" And now I don't have to tell you because you're an author and a successful one. Writing books is not easy, and in fact, it's a challenge and difficulty, and you have to stay the course. So, and I started, I stopped, I started, and I stopped, and then so after about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I thought, if I don't do it now, it will never happen. So here I wrote a book. It took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. And it's against all odds. And it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. It's not about that. You read it. It's about all the ups and downs and staying the course and never giving up and all the other things. Now, the other thing that I have to try to show to you, I don't know if you can see it, on the back of the book. Can you see what it says? The price?
I don't see the price on the book, but I thought I did see it.
$25.47.
Yeah. Okay, because I did see that on your website, and I thought that's a really interesting price range because it was so specific. Okay, and now for those of you who are just listening to this on the audio and you're not watching it on YouTube, go to YouTube and check out the cover of the book, or just go to John's website and look at the cover of the book. But John is holding up, just do it one more time, so maybe they'll go to YouTube and look at that. That is a beautiful piece of wood. Oh, well, okay, the book, yes. And then
This one,
the wooden plaque, I think what makes that so beautiful, okay, not only is it the $25.47 that you started out with and the attitude, passion, and work ethic, but I love wood. And I just want to reach out and touch it and stroke it because that is such a beautiful plaque, and it's a work of art.
and my employees gave it to me.
Oh,
So it's hanging on the wall.
uh-huh.
And
Oh, that's wonderful.
all the
Okay,
books
now
that
I want
I have.
tell us the process then about writing the book. Because of
So,
course, you didn't do well in school, but you're a really good writer. And I have another question about that. Do you think that the reason why you did not do well in school was because of the ADHD that you didn't know you had?
so let me go a little bit further in coming to that particular question in
Okay.
particular. A couple of things happened to me, Cheryl. Already I was quite successful. Everybody said, "Oh, you're so successful," blah, blah, blah. And that was before I was even 50. But I was not very good at interacting with people. I could have 3 or 4 people that worked in my mill, interact with them, that worked well. But if I had to go to a broader group, Rotary, or give presentations or talk to more people than 2 or 3, that didn't go well for me. I couldn't do that. And then my ex-sister-in-law said to me one time, she said, "I want you to go with me to Toastmasters." And I said, "What is Toastmasters?" He said, "Well, there they get together and they start speaking and learning to become better communicators." And I said, "Okay, as long as nobody asks me any questions, I'll go with you." So I did that. So I'm on through it. I was sitting halfway through the meeting and everything was going well. And then somebody said, "Hey, John, tell us about you." And I said, "Oh my God, I'll never come back here." So So I stayed there for 10 years and I became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level of Toastmasters. Not everybody goes there because and for our guests from around the world, put a bit of perspective on Toastmasters, there is probably 450,000 people actively involved in Toastmasters as we speak, mainly through North America, but also in Europe. They are clubs that focus on interacting, becoming better communicators, become better speakers, but even more importantly, better listeners. And to learn to speak on their feet, saying, "Okay, Cheryl, stand up. I want you to talk on this topic." And you then have to build a bit of story around it. And it then allows you to become better. And if you stay the course, which I did, then of the probably 10 million people that have been exposed to Toastmasters over all the years, there's probably less than 1% of them that go to the highest level of becoming a distinguished host. Obviously, I'm a very good speaker and I'm a very popular speaker and I do a lot of presentations, blah, 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 and all that other kind of stuff. So it served me well. It helped me immensely. So the other part that happened to me, I was in Toastmasters from 1990 till 2000.
Wow.
The other thing that happened to me, and I still every so often go to it because, but not, I do a lot of other stuff too. So, but in any event, the other thing that happened is that at one point I walked into a bookstore here in Prince George, and I still don't know why I did that. I picked up a book, Driven to Distraction, and I have no idea why I did that. And it was about ADHD. And I said, oh my God, that's me. And I wrote in the book, now I finally know in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And it took me then time to look at Google, learn more about it, and then was troubled by the stigma attached to that. Attention deficit disorder. It became troubling to me. And the more I found out about it, the more I learned about it, the more I knew it's what I call a superpower. And it allowed me to do all the things that I'm doing today. You named them all. I have about 10 different companies. I'm very active in the community. I do write book. I'm an author. I'm working on my 4th and 5th book as we speak. And then obviously I'm a very active podcaster, as you are, and all of that I do. And then people say to me, how can you do all of this stuff? I say ADHD. That's funny. So, and then with ADHD, the more I got to know about it, and then I'm building these companies. What am I going to do? Go to the bank and make a proposal? I'm going to lend from you millions of dollars for doing this, that, and the other thing, and say, by the way, I have a mental disorder called ADHD, and you say, have a nice day, so find somebody else, so not so now today, but, so the more I learned about it, it took me 5 years, Cheryl, from 1987 till 2002, till I went to my doctor, who was a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and that I went to him. And I came into his office. He said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. And so we looked at, yeah, I do. And then I felt I had to write a book about that. And so become more vocal about it and write a book about it. So I did. ADHD Unlocked. And
Yeah, I just have to interrupt for a minute. I absolutely love your covers because you're standing on piles of lumber.
I do.
And I mean, like I said, I told you before, I love wood. And look at that. It's just, to me, there's something so powerful about that. It's almost like there you are kind of conquering the world. And, when people get that diagnosis, ADHD, oh my God, we have to medicate you. We have to, strap you down, all that stuff. But you actually used your ADHD somehow to your advantage. And it's the gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly. And in fact, Cheryl, that, we put an ad in, which we do on a regular basis, for a senior operations manager of one of our companies. And I put in the ad that ADHD considered to be a benefit. That's how I see it. I believe that it was thought that 8% of the population is affected by it, not in a negative way, obviously, in my opinion, but have ADHD. I believe, and so do many others now, that is probably well over 20%. Wow. And then the other part about it is that I believe that most successful entrepreneurs, up to 40 to 50% of them, are benefiting by the superpower called ADHD.
Isn't that amazing? Because it, like you said, that there's such a stigma that goes along with it. And especially, I think, with boys, because I think they're affected more than girls are. But, when you go to school, it's like, sit down, shut up. And, you're going to learn stuff. And all you want to do is just move around. You want to go outside. You want to play. And that was considered to be abnormal.
See, most of the things that happened in school was things that I had absolutely no interest in it. So if you ask me afterwards, what did they talk about? I wouldn't have a clue.
Mm-hmm.
So, but on the other hand, I was very good at numbers. I was very good at writing, even then
Mm-hmm.
already. And obviously, I grew up in northeastern Holland, and for those people that are familiar with smaller countries like Holland, have 11 provinces, but the northeast speak a certain dialect that
Mm-hmm.
a High Dutch cannot even understand unless you speak High Dutch to it too. I love dialect, and
Mm-hmm.
so I had to then, when I became active before I came to Canada, when I was 23, I had to acquire to speak High Dutch. I barely got that under control. Then I'm in Canada. Now I have to learn to speak English. So and then I want to become an author. And I
Mm-hmm.
did, I am, and I'm successful at it. But so case in point is that people with ADHD that are benefited by ADHD
Mm-hmm.
is that are once they superimpose on something, they are very effective and efficient in becoming very, very good at it. I know a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people very, very successful medical doctors of the highest levels, ADHD. I get it
Mm-hmm.
over and over again in my podcast that I podcast people and saying, I got ADHD. In fact, I did a presentation to about 30 or 40 business people, young, relatively speaking, between 35 and 45, quite
Mm-hmm.
successful. And then they wanted me to speak about lumber together with two other fellows that were CEOs of lumber companies. And so I was the last one to speak. And I thought, I'm not going to speak about lumber. You guys talked about it. I'm going to talk about ADHD and being an author and doing those kind of things. So I did that. And
Mm-hmm.
doing that presentation, there were at least 3 people that put up the finger and say, I've never told anybody that I'm ADHD. And then I bet you there were a number of other ones that
Mm-hmm.
also have the benefit of ADHD. And just not being argumental necessarily, but a difference of opinion about it is that I have found in the years that I have ADHD and interacting on it, that the ratio of ADHD is as high in females as it is in males, if not more so in females in some cases, but certainly no less than. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's now the other thing that I have to say, and giving a presentation on not only on ADHD, I do an entrepreneurship and all the other things that I do. And but if I talk about ADHD, is that by the time I'm done, there are a number of people in the room that say, damn, I wish I had it too.
Okay, that's really funny you should say that because I'm thinking, how can I get a little bit of that, in me? I
Yeah,
don't have ADHD, but I do have a very healthy dose of incomparable stubbornness. So that's, I guess, what I rely on.
exactly. And that's a good thing.
Hmm. Hmm. So, and you had said that, all the other things that you do that I had already, talked about, but I'd really like to talk a little bit more about how you got into the bodybuilding and that space that you're in now, because I, saw your photos on Podmatch, and I absolutely love the picture of you on the motorcycle, shirtless, flexing.
Yeah. I like it. This one, eh?
Oh, that's it. Okay. Living young, dying old. Ooh, I like that. I hadn't
That-
seen that book. I saw the other two, but I didn't see that one.
This one will come out next July.
Oh, okay. So it's a work
Yeah,
in progress.
it's a work in progress. And so what happened is everybody gets a shock, right, at some point in their life that makes them look back and reflect on where am I going, what am I doing in regards to health and fitness and all those things. Usually what happens at New Year's Eve, you say, okay, I'm going to do this, that, and that, and that usually includes I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to get a membership, and we do all of that. And then 2 weeks later, you can find 100 reasons why you can't go to the gym. And that's the normal scenario, right?
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I got a case of diverticulitis. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes. I'm a medical person, so I have a medical
Okay.
background. So, yeah.
So so what happened is that I have a high threshold for pain. That's not good either. And we have a place in Victoria, so I'm there every weekend.
Hmm.
And so I was in Victoria, and I'm a go-go guy. because my wife always says, if she says, I have ADHD, and then during the weekend, I'm okay, I'm normal again, because John's gone until he gets back, because he go, 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 go. Anyway, so so I had this pain on my left side, and it really bothered me, and I stayed in bed part of Sunday, which I normally don't do, and then I thought, oh, there's something is not right with me, so I took a flight normally at 5 o'clock in the morning then to go back to Prince George, because I have to go to the company, and then that meant that I had to change flights in Vancouver, and I have to go from A gauge to C gauge. That takes about 15 minutes. It takes me about 5 minutes because I'm a go-go guy. I had to virtually rush, hang on to the side, because I knew because of the pain I would go on my knees, and if I did, they call 911, and I have to get to Prince George. I got to Prince George, waited for my doc, and he sent me right away to the hospital. I got an operation, and they took 20 centimeters out of my colon because
goodness.
it had ruptured. And yeah, and it took about 48 hours, and I came that close. And so now I'm fine. And that was in 2008. And and
you are so lucky that they caught that, because that's
this close. Unbelievable. So then I knew I had to do something and change. And so I took more serious. My wife is vegan, and lectured me about all the. I was not abusive, but not as good as I could be. And I started to take it really, really serious, including going to the gym. And I got a trainer. For me, my life is appointments. One, next, that's what I do. And so in order for me to go to the gym, I have to have a trainer. I have to have an appointment. And so I started going to the gym, and I did that for about 7 years. Started to work, really be careful with my diet. I'm now 80-20. Sorry about that. And so that's kind of what I did. And then after about 7 years or so, somebody at the gym said, "Hey, John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" By then, I'm already well into my 60s and late 60s. And I thought, well, why not? So I started to spend more time on training. And then in 2017, 18, I started competing in Northern BC. Bodybuilding and physique, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique. That qualified me for the provincials, came in third in physique, second bodybuilding. That qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And and then obviously then COVID came, and now after this interview again, I'm at the gym because I'm training again for this year 24 to start later this summer competing again for Northern BC, and then I'm quite sure I will be qualifying for the provincials, and then on to the nationals again in 25, and the Arnolds. And I told Arnold already I'd be going there, and he said, "Okay, yeah, we'll train together, and we'll take pictures together." So I like that. So
okay, I'm going to have to make sure that I am following you on all of your social media, because I am really interested in following this progress. That is so exciting. And I really want to make this point, for the audience, for the listeners, that getting older does not mean you're getting old. Getting older is inevitable. Being old is a choice. And yeah, okay, so go to YouTube and look at that. Look at that cover.
And that's what I said. I have to write a book about it. Is living young, dying old. That to me means, okay, I will be competing on a national level and at the Arnolds when I'm 85, and I'm still fit. I'm as you can see, this is me, and I'm still working on building up my muscles, but and I will be competing in the Masters, 55 and older. Most
Mhm.
of those could be my kids, but even
Right.
so, and nobody asked me there, okay, what's your age? So we'll give you a special. No,
Right.
you have to perform like the other ones, and otherwise, you don't qualify.
Right.
And but the point that I'm simply making, Cheryl, is the one that you are making, is that you have this precious body that
Mhm.
is given to you, if you wish, that is extremely forgiving, but only up to a certain point. And
Mhm.
then at some point it says, okay, guys, I'm not going to do anymore. And then all of a sudden you end up on the couch watching TV, as so many people do, and say, well, I can't do it. I'm too old for this and I'm too old for that. And it's,
Mhm.
no, you're not. That if you are careful about diet and
Mhm.
what you eat, and all the information is so readily available,
Mhm.
and then if you are kind to your body in terms of exercise, you don't have to become a bodybuilder or an
Mhm.
Olympian. At least spend 20 minutes a day or an hour a day to go for a walk is already
Mhm.
sufficient to be kind to your body and stay in shape. If you do that, it can add dozens of years to your life.
Mhm.
And I want to be 120 actually, and so that's working out. But I'm working towards.
Okay, so that's really funny you should say that because somebody had told me that several years ago. One of the guys at the dojo, one of the martial artists, told me one time, he said, you're going to live to be 120. And I said, why do you say that? And he says, you're going to do it just to piss people off. And it's like, okay, I don't care what the motivation is. Sure, okay,
I'll be
that
with
makes
you.
sense to me. Yeah, yeah. But you're right. I mean, our bodies are so incredibly strong and resilient, and they're this incredible gift that we have. And if we abuse it and don't treat it right, what's going to behave accordingly? And it doesn't really take that much. I always tell people that, I'm a physical therapist who hates exercise and thinks that chocolate is food because it is. But I
Yeah.
love to move. I love to dance. I love to go to martial arts. I love Pilates. So there are things that really speak to me that going to a gym is like, oh, I'm never going to do that. But that's okay. I can do other things. So it's not punishment. You find something you love to do. And then who knows, you could be competing in a bodybuilding competition.
Yeah, but the point is not that that should be the objective. If that is a
Right.
result of it all, good. But
Yeah.
the most important part is, that's why I wrote this book, or I'm writing it, is that I find a lot of times, Charles, as you probably do, and especially being an expert in the field, is that how can we keep it simple? Like,
Hmm.
like what you find amazing probably is that I spend the weekends in Vancouver. In Victoria, we have a place there, and we have horses there, and both my wife and myself ride English dressage. And then, but the interesting part about it is I do all the shopping, even for my wife. And usually when I go to the grocery store, I always stay on the outside. I go to the greens and all the healthy stuff, not
Hmm.
the aisles in between, where the less healthy stuff is. And and we eat healthy, and stay away from the obvious things, sugars in particular, and
Hmm.
all that sort of thing. And it's not complicated, but a lot of times, so the book is simply saying that I read an interesting article, and that written by a doc actually, who had looked at a study of where people did 100,000 biopsies of people that had passed away. Not a single one of them died of old age. So that speaks volumes. And
Right.
say,
Doesn't it?
yeah,
Well,
yeah,
and you're absolutely right. Just when I started getting really serious about, my health, I was probably in my early 40s. And yeah, I started reading labels at the grocery store and I was shocked. Even the foods that are labeled healthy, the stuff that's in there. Oh my goodness, no wonder why, we have so much obesity, diabetes, heart disease, et cetera, et cetera. We're poisoning ourselves.
exactly. Exactly. And it has nothing to do but taste good.
Mhm.
Healthy food can taste as good, if
Mm-hmm.
not better than the others do. And, and it's so important. But to think about your body as it's more or less a gift, but it will only take so much abuse. And
Mm-hmm.
just to stay active is again, when I talk about bodybuilding and all the other things about it, is that kind of drove me to go to the gym and create an objective. But the primary objective is to stay healthy and fit, because
Mm-hmm.
quality of life. I know so many people that are at a young age already have concluded that they can't do anything anymore because they are too old. The other thing talking about that is that I wrote in other book is that so few people, I know so many people that don't like what they are doing. And
Mm-hmm.
I heard on CNN, one of the US broadcast channels, that 70% of the people in the United States, probably Canada is the same, that don't like their job, and 75% of the 70% are looking for other jobs. And then I know lot of young people, I do a lot of presentation to them, and then I say, what is your career objective? They say, I don't know. I say, well, the more you look into it, get an idea of what do you like. If you want
Mm-hmm.
to be a welder, or you want to be a lawyer, or you want to be an accountant, or you've been an entrepreneur, talk to people that are doing it, understand it, and see what makes it attractive maybe for you, so that you can then direct your efforts towards that. Because at some point, you don't want to be one of the ones that don't like their jobs, because it affects everything around you,
Mm-hmm.
and including your family. So I felt I had to write a book about it. And so the book is Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream.
Mm-hmm.
And 2547. Yeah, I did. So the reason that I wrote that is that saying, okay, and the fair question would be, hey, John, at 83, you're still working, you're living the dream. I said, I sure am, every day. I
Mm-hmm.
usually get up at 5:30. I always feel I'm late and I'm in a hurry. I always make my bed. And then when I get to work, I'm usually one of the first ones here. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually one of the last ones to leave. And so I still love what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, there are challenges here and there, but then I always feel tomorrow's going to be better.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes life so much more pleasurable.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other part that I always tell people, young people in particular, but others as well, is try to become involved in the community, give back culturally and to the community, so because that part is very, very important.
Mhm. Yes, and you are very good at that too. That's one of the things that you really didn't touch on, but you are very, very active in giving back. And what was the other thing? You have an honorary doctorate degree in law. Is
Law
that
of law,
correct?
yeah, from the University of Northern British Columbia. Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Hmm.
I love it. Yeah, so I do. And especially saying I did a presentation when I got that on May 31st, 2019. And there was about 700 or 800 people there. And so and it was really there that I started to speak more about ADHD
Hmm.
and all the other challenges around it, the inner child, and and affected by war. It was a very, very good presentation. I'm a very good presenter. They're very much in demand. I love to speak. I speak on my feet, and I speak with passion.
Hmm.
That's what I do with all the things that I do, and so yeah, so I'm proud of that, and especially kind of looking back now as failing grade 3 and grade 7. It's somewhere along the line somebody said, you know something, this guy is a doctorate. Not just being.
But it is really funny because you didn't do well in school, and here you are now. You're a doctorate. You have your doctors. It's just I think it's fascinating your whole life's journey, and I'm just curious if you were as that 5-year-old child. If somebody had told you where you would be at this point in your life, what would you have thought? Or could you even wrap your head around it?
I did, because, and when it's interesting that you say when I was 5, I'm fifth year, 1945, my dream was to go to the land of my heroes.
Mm,
Was my dream. And
mhm,
then, the more I got, my dad was managing a small lumber company, and
mhm,
I obviously was trained as a furniture maker. My next dream was to build my own lumber mill, to
mhm,
prove to me, not to anybody else, to me, that I could do it. And then to start with nothing, nothing meaning $150, couldn't speak language, didn't know soul, didn't have a job. But within a year, I was the superintendent of Aunt Elijah's lumber mills here. And then within 2.5 years, I owned part of a lumber mill in the Yukon. And then started this company, the Brink Group of Companies, exactly virtually 50 years ago, and still in the sole owner of my 10 lumber mills.
mhm.
Normally, when all things are normal, we employ in excess of 400 people.
Wow.
And I've been very, very involved in communities and leadership within the industry, and very active speaker. And obviously I'm a very active podcaster. And
Mhm,
if would I have been able to look forward in answer to your question that what would happen, I knew that I would be successful. And but in Holland, what it is that, the you go at some point. I would get married, and then we have a house, and then I have a good career and a good job, and then people would ask me the question and saying, "Okay, John, where are your diplomas?" Well, I didn't have any diplomas.
mhm,
That's the problem in Holland, and here nobody ever asked me for my diplomas.
mhm,
So and so the point is simply, I always had dreams. That's why when I talk to finding your passion, living the dream, I
mhm,
knew from a very early age I liked, as you do, lumber and
mhm,
anything that I could be, and then I knew I would own a lumber mill, and within 2.5 years, had a piece of one already,
mhm,
and and then it was just a matter of time until I built a business around that. Now we have a number of different silos: warehousing, lumber, real estate, and a number of other things. But
mhm,
it's not about that. It's about living your dream, giving it all that you got, and then giving back to the community, and being part of that. And then the other part, very important to me, Cheryl, is that I fly a lot between here and the coast. I'm a pilot, but mainly talking commercial airlines. And
mhm,
we do a lot of business in the United States. And every time I fly in a plane, I sit by the window because I look outside and I say, it's paradise. It
mhm,
simply does not get any better. And that applies to Canada as well as the United States. I fly in the southern United States, and I've been in Denver, Colorado, and all over the place there. And I look outside and I say, it's paradise.
mhm,
The scary part of it now is, and that's why I started off talking about the wars around the world, and that it will take generations for the kids that are part of that survive, that will have that as part of their life from here on forward. How lucky we are. And I'm not sure if I listen to, and I don't want to become political, but the politics in the United States and other places, and saying they are crazy. If you
mhm,
want dictatorship, starting with a big T, then go to Korea, go to
mhm,
for a vocation, go to Russia, go to Venezuela, where they put you in a plane and then dump you out in the middle of the ocean, and or you put your mind in Holland, where at the Second World War, when I was born, the fear was that somebody would knock on the door and take that precious person. in your life away to never be seen again. And that would happen in every single community. People in our street left, and because in the middle of the night somebody knocked on their door and took them away, and to never to be returned. And and so if you don't like democratic government, if you want a dictatorship,
Leave.
become ready for it. And
Mhm.
if you want to know more about it, go to Russia for a while, or to Venezuela, or to China for that matter, or some those places. But sit in the window, look outside, and saying, "This is paradise." We are so immensely fortunate, both in the United States and in Canada.
Excellent. Yeah, I absolutely love that. I'm actually the daughter of an immigrant. My father and my grandmother got out of Czechoslovakia. They were on the last ship out of Calais before they closed the port. So it was December 29th, 1939. My father at the time was 12 years old, and 5 years later, he was in the U.S. Navy. He was a
Yeah,
CB. He was a builder, of course, which is why I love the smell of sawdust, because it just reminds me of, him building. He built the house that I grew up in. He laid the stone by himself. I mean, he did all the work himself, except of course the electrical and the plumbing. But
yeah,
so
yeah,
yeah, I have a very strong heart for our freedoms.
exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. So John, how can people get a hold of you?
So it's jonabrink.com.
Mhm,
And then I'm on all the major media for my books.
mhm.
All of them are 2547, so but and then podcasting On The Brink,
Mhm,
it's
mhm.
John A. Brink, and so yeah, and then my name is all over the Google and the internet.
Yeah, you certainly are. You're pretty easy to find.
Yes,
If anyone can't find you, they're just not looking. YouTube channel is fantastic. It's absolutely amazing. So great job. And congratulations on all the books and everything that you've been doing. And John, thank you so much for being here. It really means a lot to me. It's great conversation, and I can't wait to follow you, especially through your journey into the bodybuilding competition.
thanks, Cheryl. It was my pleasure and my privilege.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. My goodness, what a story, right? Make sure that you share this episode with everyone you know, because there are so many pearls of wisdom in here for everybody that we can learn from, not only from a historical perspective, but moving forward for our health, wellness, fitness, mentality. And remember to live your dream. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.